Third week in Psalm 139. We're going to read the beginning and the end of it. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest when I sit down and when I rise up. Thou discernest my thoughts from afar. Thou searchest out my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all of my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, thou knowest it completely. Thou dost beset me behind and before, and layest thy hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. I'm jumping to the end. How precious to me are thy thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. When I awake, I am still with thee. Oh, that thou wouldst slay the wicked, O God, and that men of blood would depart from me, men who maliciously defy me, who lift themselves up against thee for evil. Do I not hate them that hate you, Lord? And do I not loathe them that rise up against thee? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. The word of the Lord. So the first week, we talked about the psalm. We talked about how God made our innermost parts, which is the word for kidneys in Hebrew. Right? So our kidneys, they filter what comes into the body and then discards what we don't need. So by using this image of kidneys, the psalmist affirms our ability and our need and perhaps responsibility to filter what comes into our lives, right? Not just food, of course, but conversation, information, relationships. We have the ability and responsibility to think twice what we let into our bodies and into our minds. And then last week, we went from God creating our inmost parts to God being everywhere in our outer world, right? That the psalmist affirms there's absolutely no place that we can go where God is not already. We cannot hide from God. We cannot withhold ourselves from God. God is where we are. So this week, start from the beginning. I found a colleague interpreting it. His name is Dave Hopwood. He rewrites it in a way. He says, O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I am full of hope and enthusiasm. You know when I am struggling to see a way forward. You know when my faith is alive, and you know when I am full of doubt. Oh Lord, you have searched me and you've known me. You discern my thoughts from far away. My thoughts, oh God, you know that they often clash with one another. Sometimes I'm full of certainty. Sometimes I'm full of disbelief. Sometimes I'm full of trust. Sometimes I'm full of questions. Sometimes I'm full of caring. Sometimes I'm selfish. And you know that my mind wanders. Sometimes my mind daydreams. And sometimes it visits dark corners. Right? Keeps going. I like how he just expands the text, kind of imagining all the areas of our mind that God must know. All the thoughts that we have over the course of the day, like I was talking with the children. There's no recognition for the song that he or that she knows everything. Or there's no recognition, there is a recognition, there you go. There's a recognition for the psalmist that he or that she does not know everything. That's why I put the Johari window on the front cover of your bulletin, right? Right, the Johari window. There are things that the psalmist, right, if you can imagine, things that the psalmist knows and things that the psalmist does not know. There are things that others know but the psalmist doesn't know, and then there are things that no one knows except God, the psalmist says. right? So being dishonest with God requires that the psalmist is honest also with himself, which sometimes is a lot harder, right? God has searched the psalmist's public self, right? God has searched the psalmist's private self. God knows the psalmist's blind spots, right? And God, yes, God knows the things that are hidden to all of us. And God, you have searched me and you know me. The word search is the same as to sift through. To sift through. God has sifted through the psalmist's life. God knows the psalmist's life. Do we dare have this kind of honest, humble, intimate reckoning, right, with God? It's very honest search, really. The psalmist doesn't just stick to comfortable areas or happy thoughts, right? The psalmist is brave to sift through each corner. And in one corner, the psalmist finds anger and frustration, as we read at the end, right? Perhaps even righteous indignation, the psalmist is saying. I hate your enemies, oh God, they're my enemies too. But his sifting doesn't end with just stumbling on those thoughts, right? He questions his own thoughts. He seeks to understand himself as well, almost as if asking, I wonder if my righteous indignation is really just self-righteousness. And if so, God, do something about that for me. The psalmist admits that perhaps he is sincere in his thoughts, but one can also be sincerely wrong. When I was a child, I would, when I argued with my mother, and as children, children know everything, right? So when it was those kind of arguments where I clearly know, right, and she's wrong, she would say, leave a little room to be wrong, Beth. Leave a little room, right? It's good advice. Leave a little room to be wrong, because we don't know everything, remember? We all have blind spots. And there are most definitely things that are hidden from us. We don't know the whole story. We don't know everything. And so the psalmist leaves a little room to be wrong by asking God to continue to search him, to continue to search her. Oh God, search me. See if there is any fault in me, is how he ends the song. Lead me in the way everlasting. Lead my thought, God. Lead my agenda, my hopes, my dreams. Lead me to everlasting way. Not life, the everlasting way. Sift through our joy and our sorrow. Would we pray that? Sift through our anger and our disgust. Know us, God. Know us. And then cause us to follow you. To be in your way. Your everlasting way, not my way. Our lives are not finished. Our ability to know or understand is not finished. It's not limited by our own ability to know or understand, thank God. Because if we're in relationship with God, who does know and understand, then my ability to know and understand has potential. So the psalmist gives God a search warrant. That's how I read those last lines. Keep searching me, God. Sift through me to see if there is anything offensive in me. The psalmist places herself entirely in the hands of God. Such courage, right? Such trust, such humility. I've been attending a grief share group, the one actually at the Kingston Church that you see the sign out front. At the end of each week it has a workbook and everything, homework and things like that. I'm mostly good at doing my homework. But at the end of the week there is a weekly check-in, and it's got like a little grid, and it asks me to rate myself. And it goes, there's 4 options: really bad, okay, pretty good, and great. And then it wants me to rate my 4 areas of my life: emotionally, physically, spiritually, and relationally. Right? So once a week, usually right before I go to the class, I just check in and say, like, how am I doing? So last week, here are my answers, right? They change from week to week, but I'm being honest with you. Emotionally, I span between really bad and okay. And I think I wrote something like, because remember it was a boy's birthday, and yeah. And then physically, I wrote okay, but I noted that I actually would really like to start exercising again. Like now that I've moved, I gotta find a gym, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good that I. Spiritually, I said okay, because I didn't quite have enough, I wrote study time, which I think if I remember right was that I just didn't have as much study time as I wanted, right? And then relationally, I actually put great, and I put Dan, conversation, because I had a great conversation with Dan, right? So it's just really easy check-in. It didn't take very long, you know? But what they're not writing, it has also caused me to think through, because there are other areas of our life that require and deserve reflection, more than just emotional, physical, spiritual, relational, right? Since Pete died, there's a couple areas specifically that I would add to that list, and I find myself doing it. Financially, right? Like my life changed radically when Pete died. So my finances have changed since Pete died. And so I want God to sift through how I spend my money so that I budget in such a way that I'm able to give money away and also save for what's important, like Joe's wedding coming up, right? So I have to check in with that. That doesn't just happen. I mean, I don't know anyone who just, finances just happen, right? You have to think about it and budget and things. So another area that I'm wanting God to sift through is my family, because with Pete's death, my family changed, how we interact with one another. And I'm trying to budget my time so that I can be in the city with Joe as often as possible. I want to think about how both the boys are doing. I want to find ways to ask them, how are you doing without Dad? What's life, you know? So I'm thinking through that. I don't add it to my chart, but those are things I'm checking in on, right? Another area that I'm looking to God to sift through, though, is my job, being your pastor. Because I'm mindful that any grief for anyone can affect how they are able to do their job, how they're able to focus, or how they're able to handle responsibilities and tasks and stress and things like that. So this weekly check-in has been really helpful for me. Like, it's such a simple thing, but I'm so surprised by how helpful it is to, like, give myself a grade. Even if it's a bad grade, it's just a grade. It's just this week. Next week's going to be different, right? So I looked for a similar tool that I might offer to you all, and it is in your bulletin today. It's a blue sheet of paper, and on the top it says the Examine. The Examine is a spiritual practice. It was given to us by St. Ignatius of Loyola from Spain. He was born 1 year before Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I offer that as a time frame. That's one of the things, if Pete was here, I would have been like, you're not going to believe this. What does it mean that St. Ignatius lived when Columbus and this world travel and the world changed 1492, but then what is, you know, he would love that conversation. So I offer to you, find someone to have that conversation with. It sounds like a good conversation to me, right? Like, because that's something of that timing caused him to say, we need a daily check-in. We need to figure out how we're doing, right? And so this tool, it takes 5 to 10 minutes, right? It can be done weekly, it can be done daily. It can take longer, of course, if you wanted it to. The Examine is typically done before bed. What makes the Examine, I think, so fruitful is that as we sift through our life over time, we begin to see trends in our life. We start to notice where our blind spots are, so we can't ignore them anymore, right? We start to realize the things we really don't know, and so we stop acting like we know them. So in our sifting, right, if we are humble, we can recognize our own limitations, the things that we simply don't know. We can admit that we're not finished yet. We can still grow, we can still learn, we can find understanding of ourselves and of our world. And so my question to us is, do we dare give God a search warrant? Do we dare to join God in the sifting through our life? And I pray that we would have the courage and the desire for the truth and the humility to search and know, just as God has searched and known us. Amen. Would you please stand with me as we affirm our faith together?